I never told my son about my $40,000 a month salary, even though he always saw me living a simple life. One day he invited me to have dinner with his wife's parents who were visiting from California. I decided to see how they would treat a poor person by pretending to be a broken, naive mother. But as soon as I walked through the door of that restaurant, everything changed. What happened that night shattered my daughter-in-law and her family in a way they never imagined. And believe me, they deserved it. Let me explain how I got there. Let me tell you who I really am. Because my son Thomas, at 35 years old, never knew the truth about his mother. To him, I was always that woman who left early for the office, who came back tired at night, who cooked with whatever was in the fridge. Just another employee, a secretary, maybe someone in the crowd. Nothing special. And I never corrected him. I never told him I earned $40,000 every month. That I had been a director at a multinational corporation for almost 20 years. That I signed multi-million-dollar contracts. That I made decisions affecting thousands of people. Why would I tell him money was never something I needed to hang on the wall like a trophy? I grew up in a time when dignity was carried on the inside, where silence was worth more than empty words. So I kept my truth. I lived in the same simple apartment for years. I used the same leather purse until it fell apart. I bought clothes at regular stores. I cooked at home. I saved everything. I invested everything. And I got rich in silence because real power doesn't scream. Real power observes. And I observed carefully when Thomas called me that Tuesday afternoon. His voice sounded different, nervous, like when he was a little boy who'd done something wrong. "Mom, I need to ask you a favor. Amanda's parents are visiting from California. It's their first time here. They want to meet you. There's a dinner on Saturday at a restaurant. Please come." Something in his tone made me uncomfortable. It wasn't the voice of a son inviting his mother. It was the voice of someone asking me not to embarrass him, to fit in, to make a good impression. "Do they know anything about me?" I asked calmly. There was a silence. Then Thomas stammered. "I told them you work in an office, that you live alone, that you're simple, that you don't have much." There it was, the word simple. As if my entire life could fit into that one miserable adjective. As if I were a problem he needed to apologize for. I took a deep breath. A very deep breath. "It's okay, Thomas, I'll be there." I hung up. I stood there looking at my living room. Old but comfortable furniture walls without expensive paintings, a small TV, nothing to impress anyone. And in that moment I decided if my son believed I was a poor woman, if his wife's parents were coming ready to judge, then I would give them exactly what they expected to see. I would pretend to be broke, naive, desperate, a mother who was barely surviving. I wanted to feel firsthand how they treat someone who has nothing. I wanted to see their true faces because I suspected something. I suspected that Amanda and her family were the kind of people who measure others by their wallets, and my instinct is never wrong. Saturday arrived. I dressed in the ugliest thing I owned. A light gray, shapeless, wrinkled dress, the kind they sell at flea markets. Old worn-out shoes, no jewelry, not even a watch. I took a faded cloth purse. I pulled my hair back into a messy ponytail. I looked in the mirror. I looked like a woman destroyed by life. Forgettable. Perfect. I got into a taxi. I gave the address. Le Bernardin, a restaurant in the most expensive part of the city, the kind where the menu has no prices, where each table costs more than a normal person's monthly salary. As we drove, I felt something strange, a mix of anticipation and sadness. Anticipation because I knew something big was coming. Sadness because a part of me still hoped I was wrong. I hoped they would treat me well, that they would be kind, that they would see beyond the old clothes. But the other part, the one that worked for 40 years among corporate sharks, that part knew exactly what was waiting for me. The taxi stopped in front of the restaurant. Warm lights, a doorman in white gloves, elegant people walking in. I paid. I got out. I took a deep breath. I walked through the door, and there they were. Thomas was standing next to a long table near the windows. He wore a dark suit, white shirt, shiny shoes. He looked nervous. Next to him was Amanda, my daughter-in-law. She wore a beige dress with gold details, high heels, her hair perfectly straight, falling over her shoulders. She looked impeccable as always, but she wasn't looking at me. She was looking towards the entrance with a tense, almost embarrassed expression. And then I saw them. Amanda's parents already seated at the table, waiting like kings on their thrones. The mother, Stephanie Brown, wore a tight, sparkling emerald green dress, jewelry on her neck, on her wrists, on her fingers. Her black hair was pulled up in an elegant bun. She had that kind of cold, calculated beauty that intimidates. Next to her was William, her husband, an impeccable gray suit, a giant watch on his wrist, a serious expression. They both looked like they had stepped out of a luxury magazine. I walked towards them slowly with short steps as if I were afraid. Thomas saw me first, and his face changed. His eyes widened. He looked me up and down. I saw him swallow hard. "Mom, you said you were coming." His voice sounded uncomfortable. "Of course, son. Here I am." I smiled shyly, a smile from a woman who isn't used to places like this. Amanda greeted me with a quick kiss on the cheek, cold mechanical. "Mother-in-law, so good to see you." Her eyes said the exact opposite. She introduced me to her parents in a strange tone, almost apologizing. "Dad, Mom, this is Elizabeth, Thomas's mom." Stephanie looked up. She looked at me. And in that instant I saw it all. The judgment, the contempt, the disappointment. Her eyes scanned my wrinkled dress, my old shoes, my cloth purse. She didn't say anything at first. She just extended her hand. Cold, quick limp. A pleasure. William did the same. A weak handshake. A fake smile. Charmed. I sat in the chair at the end of the table, the one furthest from them, as if I were a second-class guest. No one helped me with my chair. No one asked if I was comfortable. The waiter arrived with the menus, elegant, heavy, in French. I opened one and pretended not to understand anything. Stephanie was watching me. "Do you need help with the menu?" she asked with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, please. I don't know what these words mean." My voice came out small, timid. She sighed. She ordered for me. "Something simple," she said. "Something that doesn't cost too much. We don't want to overdo it." The sentence hung in the air. William nodded. Thomas looked away. Amanda fidgeted with her napkin. No one said anything, and I just watched. Stephanie started talking first about general things about the trip from California, how tiring the flight was, how different everything was here. Then she started talking about money subtly at first. She mentioned the hotel they were staying at $500 a night. She mentioned the car they had rented, a luxury one, obviously. She mentioned the stores they had visited. We bought a few things. Nothing too crazy, just a few thousand. She spoke while looking at me as if waiting for a reaction, as if waiting for me to be impressed. I just nodded. "How nice," I'd say. "How lovely," she continued. "You know, Elizabeth, we've always been very careful with money. We work hard. We invest well. Now we have properties in 3 countries. William has important businesses. And well, I dedicate myself to overseeing our investments." She smiled a superior smile. "And you, Elizabeth? What do you do exactly?" Her tone was sweet but venomous. "I work in an office," I replied, looking down. "I do a bit of everything. Paperwork, filing, simple things." Stephanie exchanged a look with William. "Ah, I see. Administrative work. That's good. It's honest. All jobs are dignified." "Right. Of course," I replied. The food arrived. Huge plates with tiny portions. Everything decorated like art. Stephanie cut her steak with precision. "This costs $80, she said. "But it's worth it. You pay for quality. You can't just eat anything, right, Elizabeth?" I nodded. "Of course you're right." Thomas tried to change the subject. He talked about his work, about some projects. Stephanie interrupted him. "Son, does your mother live alone?" Thomas nodded. "Yes, she has a small apartment." Stephanie looked at me with fake pity. "It must be hard, right? Living alone at your age without much support, and your salary is enough for everything." I felt the trap closing. "Barely," I answered. "But I manage. I save where I can. I don't need much." Stephanie sighed dramatically. "Oh, Elizabeth, you're so brave. Truly, I admire women who fight on their own. Although, of course, one always wants to give our children more, give them a better life. But, well, everyone gives what they can." There it was, the blow. Soft but deadly. She was telling me that I hadn't been enough for my son, that I hadn't given him what he deserved, that I was a poor mother, insufficient. Sarah stared at her plate. Thomas was clenching his fists under the table, and I just smiled. "Yes, you're right. Everyone gives what they can," Stephanie continued. "We always made sure Amanda had the best. She studied at the best schools. She traveled the world. She learned 4 languages. Now she has an excellent job. She earns very well. And when she married Thomas, well, we helped them a lot. We gave them money for the down payment on the house. We paid for their honeymoon because that's who we are. We believe in supporting our children." She looked at me intently. And you, Elizabeth, were you able to help Thomas with anything when they got married? The question hung like a sharp knife. Not much I answered. I gave them what I could. A small gift. Stephanie smiled. How lovely. Every little bit counts, right? The amount doesn't matter. It's the thought that counts. And right there in that moment, I felt the rage begin to awaken inside me. The rage wasn't explosive. It was cold, controlled like a river under ice. I breathed slowly. I kept my timid smile. I let Stephanie keep talking because that's what people like her do. They talk. They inflate themselves. They show off. And the more they talk, the more they reveal themselves, the more they expose themselves, the more they show the emptiness they carry inside. Stephanie picked up her wine glass, red expensive. She swirled it in her hand as if she were an expert. This wine is from an exclusive region in France. It costs $200 a bottle, but when you know about quality, you don't skimp. Do you drink wine? Elizabeth, only on special occasions, I replied. And usually the cheapest kind. I don't understand much about these things. Stephanie smiled condescendingly. Oh, don't worry. Not everyone has a trained palate. That comes with experience, with travel, with education. We visited vineyards in Europe, in South America, and California. William and I are quite the connoisseurs. William nodded. It's a hobby, something we enjoy. Amanda is also learning. She has good taste. She inherited it from us. He looked at Amanda with pride. Amanda gave a weak smile. Thanks, Mom. Stephanie turned back to me. And you, Elizabeth, do you have any hobbies? Anything you enjoy doing in your free time? I shrugged. I watch TV. I cook. I walk in the park. Simple things. Stephanie and William exchanged another look. A look loaded with meaning, with silent judgment. How lovely, said Stephanie. Simplicity has its charm, too. Although, of course, one always aspires for more, right? To see the world, to experience new things, to grow culturally. But I understand that not everyone has those opportunities. I nodded. You're right. Not all of us have those opportunities. The waiter arrived with dessert. Small portions of something that looked like edible art. Stephanie ordered the most expensive one, $30 for a piece of cake the size of a cookie. This is delicious, she said after the first bite. It has edible gold on it. See these little golden flakes. It's a detail that only the best restaurants offer. I took my dessert. Simpler, cheaper. I ate it in silence. Stephanie continued. You know, Elizabeth, I think it's important we talk about something as a family. Now that we're all here. She looked up. Her expression changed. It became serious, motherly fake. Thomas is our son-in-law, and we love him very much. Amanda loves him, and we respect that decision, but as parents, we always want what's best for our daughter. Thomas tensed up. Mom, I don't think this is the time. Stephanie raised her hand. Let me finish. Son, this is important. She looked at me. Elizabeth, I understand you've done the best you could with Thomas. I know raising him alone wasn't easy, and I respect you for that. I really do. But now Thomas is in a different stage of his life. He's married. He has responsibilities. And Amanda and he deserve to have stability. Stability, I asked in a soft voice. Yes, Stephanie replied. Financial stability, emotional. We've helped a lot, and we'll continue to help, but we also think it's important that Thomas doesn't have any unnecessary burdens. Her meaning was clear. She was calling me a burden. Me, her son-in-law's mother, the mother of her daughter's husband. Amanda stared at her plate as if she wanted to disappear. Thomas's jaw was tight. Burdens, I repeated. Stephanie sighed. I don't want to sound harsh, Elizabeth, but at your age, living alone with a limited salary, it's natural for Thomas to worry about you, for him to feel he has to take care of you. And that's fine. He's a good son, but we don't want that worry to affect his marriage. Do you understand me? Perfectly, I replied. Stephanie smiled. Good. I'm glad you understand. That's why we wanted to talk to you. William and I have thought of something. She paused dramatically. We could help you financially, give you a small monthly allowance, something that would let you live more peacefully without Thomas having to worry so much. Obviously, it would be something modest. We can't work miracles, but it would be a support. I remained silent, watching her waiting. She continued. And in return, we would only ask that you respect Thomas and Amanda's space, that you don't seek them out so much, that you don't pressure them, that you give them the freedom to build their life together without interference. What do you think? There it was, the offer, the bribe disguised as charity. They wanted to buy me. They wanted to pay me to disappear from my son's life so I wouldn't be a nuisance, so I wouldn't embarrass their precious daughter with my poverty. Thomas exploded. "Mom, this is enough. You don't have to," Stephanie interrupted him. "Thomas, calm down. We're talking like adults. Your mother understands." "Right, Elizabeth." I took my napkin. I calmly wiped my lips. I drank a sip of water. I let the silence grow. Everyone was looking at me. Stephanie with expectation. William with arrogance. Amanda with shame. Thomas with desperation. And then I spoke. My voice came out different. It was no longer timid. It was no longer small. It was firm, clear, cold. "That's an interesting offer, Stephanie." "Truly. Very generous of you." Stephanie smiled victoriously. "I'm glad you see it that way." I nodded. "But I have a few questions just so I understand correctly." Stephanie blinked. "Of course, ask whatever you want." I leaned forward slightly. "What would you consider a modest monthly allowance? $500, $1,000? Stephanie hesitated. "Well, we were thinking around $500, maybe $700. It depends." I nodded. "I see. $700 a month for me to disappear from my son's life." Stephanie frowned. "I wouldn't put it like that." "But yes," I replied. "That's exactly how you put it." She shifted in her chair. "Elizabeth, I don't want you to misunderstand. We just want to help." "Of course," I said. "Help? Like you helped with the down payment on the house." "How much was that $30,000? Stephanie nodded with pride. $40,000, actually." "Ah, $40,000. How generous." "And the honeymoon?" Stephanie said it was a 3-week trip through Europe. "Incredible," I replied. "So you've invested about $55,000 in Thomas and Amanda." Stephanie smiled. "Well, when you love your children, you don't skimp." I nodded slowly. "You're right. When you love your children, you don't skimp. But tell me something. Stephanie, did all that investment, all that money, buy you anything?" Stephanie blinked confused. "What did it buy you? Respect?" I continued. "Did it buy you real love, or did it just buy obedience?" The atmosphere changed. Stephanie stopped smiling. "Excuse me." My tone grew sharper. "You've been talking about money all night, about how much things cost, how much you spent, how much you have. But you haven't asked me once how I am, if I'm happy, if anything hurts, if I need company. You've only calculated how much I'm worth, and apparently I'm worth $700 a month." Stephanie turned pale. "I did not—" "Yes," I interrupted. "You did. From the moment I arrived, you've been measuring my value with your wallet. And you know what I discovered, Stephanie? I discovered that the people who only talk about money are the ones who least understand its true value." William intervened. "I think you're misinterpreting my wife's intentions." "Oh, really?" I looked directly at him. "And what are her intentions? To treat me with pity, to humiliate me throughout dinner, to offer me a handout so I'll disappear?" William opened his mouth but said nothing. Thomas was pale. "Mom, please." I looked at him. "No, Thomas, please, no. I'm done being quiet." I placed my napkin on the table. I leaned back in my chair. There was no more shyness in my posture, no more shrinking. I looked Stephanie directly in the eyes. She held my gaze for a second, then looked away. Uncomfortable. Something had changed, and she felt it. They all felt it. "Stephanie, you said something very interesting a moment ago. You said you admire women who fight alone, that they are brave." Stephanie nodded slowly. "Yes, I did." "Then let me ask you something. Have you ever fought alone? Have you ever worked without your husband backing you up? Have you ever built something with your own 2 hands without your family's money?" Stephanie stammered. I have my own achievements." Like what I asked with genuine curiosity. "Tell me." Stephanie fixed her hair. "I manage our investments. I oversee properties. I make important decisions in our businesses." I nodded. "Businesses your husband built, properties you bought together, investments made with the money he generated. Or am I wrong?" William intervened, annoyed. "That's not fair. My wife works just as hard as I do." "Of course," I replied calmly. "I don't doubt that she works. But there's a difference between managing money that already exists and creating it from scratch. Between overseeing an empire you inherited and building it brick by brick. Don't you think?" Stephanie pursed her lips. "I don't know where you're going with this, Elizabeth." "Let me explain," I replied. 40 years ago, I was 23 years old. I was a secretary in a small company. I earned minimum wage. I lived in a rented room. I ate the cheapest food I could find, and I was alone, completely alone. Thomas was staring at me. I had never told him this in such detail. I continued. One day I got pregnant. The father disappeared. My family turned their back on me. I had to decide whether to keep going or give up. I chose to keep going. I worked until the last day of my pregnancy. I went back to work 2 weeks after Thomas was born. A neighbor watched him during the day. I worked 12 hours a day. I paused. I drank some water. No one spoke. But I didn't stay as secretary. I studied at night. I took courses. I learned English at the public library. I learned accounting finance management. I became an expert in things no one taught me. All on my own. All while raising a child alone. All while paying rent, food, medicine, clothes. Stephanie was staring at her plate. Her arrogance was starting to crumble. And you know what happened, Stephanie? I got promoted. Little by little, from secretary to assistant, from assistant to coordinator, from coordinator to manager, from manager to director. It took me 20 years. 20 years of nonstop work, of sacrifices you can't even imagine. But I did it. And do you know how much I earn now? I asked. Stephanie shook her head. $40,000 a month. The silence was absolute, as if someone had pressed a pause button on the universe. Thomas dropped his fork. Amanda's eyes went wide. William frowned in disbelief, and Stephanie froze with her mouth slightly open. $40,000, I repeated. Every month for almost 20 years, that's nearly $10 million in gross income over my career, not counting investments, not counting bonuses, not counting company stock. Stephanie blinked several times. No, I don't understand. You earn $40,000 a month. That's right, I replied calmly. I'm the regional director of operations for a multinational corporation. I oversee 5 countries. I manage budgets of hundreds of millions of dollars. I make decisions that affect more than 10,000 employees. I sign contracts that you couldn't read without lawyers. And I do it every single day. Thomas was pale. Mom, why did you never tell me? I looked at him tenderly. Because you didn't need to know, son. Because I wanted you to grow up valuing hard work, not money. Because I wanted you to become your own person, not an heir. Because money corrupts, and I wasn't going to let it corrupt you. But then Amanda whispered, why do you live in that small apartment? Why do you wear simple clothes? Why don't you have a luxury car? I smiled. Because I don't need to impress anyone. Because true wealth isn't for show. Because I learned that the more you have, the less you need to prove it. I looked at Stephanie. That's why I came dressed like this tonight. That's why I pretended to be poor. That's why I acted like a broke and naive woman. I wanted to see how you would treat me if you thought I had nothing. I wanted to see your true colors. And boy, did I see them, Stephanie. I saw them perfectly. Stephanie was red with shame, with anger, with humiliation. This is ridiculous. If you earned that much money, we would know. Thomas would know. Why would he believe you're poor? Because I let him. I answered, because I never talked about my work, because I live simply, because the money I earn, I invest, I save it, I multiply it. I don't spend it on flashy jewelry or showing off in expensive restaurants. William cleared his throat. Even so, that doesn't change the fact that you were rude, that you misinterpreted our intentions. Really, I looked at him intently. Did I misinterpret when you said I was a burden to Thomas? Did I misinterpret when you offered to pay me $700 to disappear from his life? Did I misinterpret every condescending comment about my clothes, my job, my life? William didn't answer. Neither did Stephanie. I stood up. Everyone looked at me. Let me tell you something that clearly no one has ever told you. Money doesn't buy class. It doesn't buy a real education. It doesn't buy empathy. You have money. Maybe a lot of it, but you don't have a single ounce of what really matters. Stephanie stood up, too furious. And you do. You who lied, who deceived us, who made us look like fools. I didn't make you look like fools, I replied coldly. You managed that all by yourselves. I just gave you the opportunity to show who you really are, and you did magnificently. Amanda had tears in her eyes. Mother-in-law, I didn't know. I know I interrupted. You didn't know, but your parents knew what they were doing. They knew they were humiliating me, and they enjoyed it until they found out that the poor woman they looked down on has more money than them, and now they don't know what to do with that information. Stephanie was trembling. You have no right. I have every right, I answered. Because I am your son-in-law's mother. Because I deserve respect, not for my money. Not for my job, but for being a human being. Something you forgot during this entire dinner. Thomas stood up. Mom, please let's go. I looked at him. Not yet, son. I'm not finished yet. I looked at Stephanie one last time. You offered to help me with $700 a month. Let me make you a counteroffer. I'll give you $1 million right now if you can prove to me that you have ever in your lives treated someone well who didn't have money. Stephanie opened her mouth. She closed it. She said nothing. Exactly, I replied. You can't, because for you, people are only worth what they have in the bank. And that's the difference between you and me. I built wealth. You just spend it. I earned respect. You buy it. I have dignity. You have bank accounts. I picked up my old cloth purse. I took out a credit card. Black Platinum. I dropped it on the table in front of Stephanie. This is my corporate card. Unlimited limit. Pay for dinner. All of it. With a generous tip. Consider it a gift from a broke and naive mother. Stephanie looked at the card as if it were a venomous snake black, shiny with my name engraved in silver letters. Elizabeth Miller, Regional Director. Her hand trembled slightly as she picked it up. She turned it over. She looked at it. Then she looked at me. Her eyes no longer had that gleam of superiority. Now there was something different. Something I never thought I'd see in her. Fear. I don't need your money, she said in a broken voice. I know, I replied. But I didn't need your pity either. And yet you offered it to me all through dinner. So take it as a gesture of courtesy or education, something you clearly didn't learn despite all your trips to Europe. William tapped the table gently. Enough. This has gotten out of control. You are disrespecting us. Respect, I repeated. How interesting that you use that word now. Where was your respect when your wife asked me if my salary was enough to live on? Where was it when she suggested I was a burden to my son? Where was it when she offered to buy me off so I would disappear? William clenched his jaw. Stephanie just wanted to help. No, I corrected. Stephanie wanted to control. She wanted to make sure the poor mother didn't ruin her daughter's perfect image. She wanted to eliminate the weak link in the chain. The problem is you picked the wrong link. I looked at Amanda. Her head was down. Her hands were on her lap, shaking. Amanda, I said softly. She looked up. Tears were running down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I didn't know that my parents... Don't finish that sentence, I interrupted her. Because you did know. Maybe you didn't know about my money, but you knew what your parents are like. You know them. You know how they treat people they consider inferior. And you did nothing to stop them. Amanda sobbed. I wanted to say something, but they're my parents. I know, I answered. And Thomas is my son. And still I let him make his own decisions. I let him choose his life, his wife, his path, because that's how you love, with freedom, not with control, not with money, not with manipulation. Thomas came closer to me. Mom, forgive me. Please forgive me for never asking, for assuming, for thinking you were... His voice broke. I hugged him. You don't have to apologize, son. I did what I did for a reason. I wanted you to be independent, to value the right things, not to depend on me financially to build your own life. But you made me feel like I had to protect you, Thomas said. That I had to worry about you, that you were fragile. I know, I answered, and it wasn't wrong for you to think that. Because that's how you learn to care, to worry about others, to be empathetic. Those are lessons that money can't buy. Thomas hugged me tightly. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Stephanie was still standing rigid, watching the scene with a mix of confusion and contained rage. This changes nothing, she said finally. You lied. You deceived us. You came here with hidden intentions. You acted in bad faith. That's true, I nodded. I acted. I pretended to be something I'm not. Exactly what you do every single day. What is that supposed to mean? William asked. It means you hide behind your money, behind your jewelry, behind your trips, behind everything you can buy. But inside, you're empty. You don't have deep conversations. You don't have real interests. You have nothing to offer beyond a bank account. Stephanie laughed a dry, bitter laugh. That's hypocrisy, maybe, I replied. But my lie exposed the truth, your truth, and now you can't hide. Now you know that I saw you, that I felt every comment, that I stored every insult disguised as advice, and that I will never forget it. The waiter approached timidly. Excuse me, would you like anything else? William shook his head sharply. Just the check. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Stephanie sat down again, defeated. Her posture was no longer elegant. It was the posture of someone who had just lost something important. And it wasn't money. It was power. Elizabeth, she said in a softer, less aggressive voice, I don't want this to ruin the relationship between our families. Thomas and Amanda love each other. They have a life together. We can't let this, I interrupted her, let this what ruin your plans expose what you really think. It's too late for that, Stephanie. The damage is done. But we can fix it, she insisted. We can start over. No, I cut her off firmly. We can't, because now I know who you are and you know who I am. And that truth can't be erased with empty apologies or fake smiles. You treated me like trash, and you did it with pleasure, with joy, because you thought you could. William cleared his throat. You were the one who came here lying. You provoked this situation. You're right, I nodded. I provoked this because I needed to know. I needed to confirm what I already suspected. That you are not good people. That your money doesn't make you better. That you are exactly the kind of people who look down on others for not having the same. Stephanie wiped away a tear. We're not bad people. Maybe not, I replied, but you are definitely not good. And there's a huge difference between those two things. The waiter returned with the check. He left it in the center of the table. No one touched it. Stephanie looked at my black card still in her hands. Then she looked at me. I'm not using your card, she said. We will pay our own bill as we always do. Perfect, I replied. Then keep that card as a souvenir, as a reminder that not everything is as it seems, that the woman you looked down on all night has more than you will ever have. And I'm not just talking about money. Stephanie left the card on the table. I don't want it, and I don't want your morality lesson either. I pushed it back towards her. Keep it anyway, because something tells me you're going to need it. Someday you're going to meet someone like me, someone who pretends to be less than they are, and you're going to make the same mistake again because people like you never learn. William took out his wallet. He took out several credit cards, all gold, all shiny. He chose one and put it on top of the check. The waiter took it and left. No one spoke during those minutes of waiting. The silence was thick, uncomfortable, heavy. Amanda was crying silently. Thomas was holding my hand. Stephanie was staring at the wall. William was checking his phone to avoid eye contact. The waiter came back. Sir, your card was declined. William looked up sharply. What? That's impossible. That card has a very high limit. It must be a system error. The waiter shrugged. I can try again if you like. William handed him another card. The waiter left. Stephanie looked nervously at her husband. What happened? I don't know. William answered, irritated. It must be a bank error. Maybe they froze the account for security. It happens sometimes when you travel. I nodded with feigned understanding. Of course those things happen. How inconvenient. The waiter returned again. I'm sorry, sir. This one was declined too. William stood up. This is ridiculous. I'm going to call the bank right now. He stormed out of the restaurant. Stephanie remained seated, ashamed, humiliated. This has never happened to us, she murmured. Never. What bad timing, I commented without emotion. Thomas looked at the check. Mom, No, I interrupted him. You're not paying for anything. I took out my wallet. A simple old leather wallet. I took out another card. This one wasn't black. It was transparent, made of metal heavy. A card that less than 1% of the people in the world have. I placed it on the table in front of Stephanie. She looked at it. Her eyes widened. She recognized what it was. That's a Centurion card. That's right, I replied. American Express by invitation only. Minimum annual spending requirement of $250,000, a $5,000 annual fee just to have it, and benefits you can never imagine. Stephanie said nothing. The waiter took the card carefully as if it were something sacred. He returned in less than 2 minutes. Thank you, Mrs. Miller. Everything is all set. Would you like the receipt? That's not necessary, I replied. The waiter nodded and left. Stephanie was still staring at the space where the card had been. I stood up. I took my old purse, my cloth bag. I looked at Stephanie one last time. The dinner was delicious. Thanks for the recommendation. And thank you for showing me exactly who you are. You saved me a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of future disappointments. Stephanie finally looked up. Her eyes were red, not from crying, but from contained rage. This isn't over, she said with a trembling voice. You can't just humiliate us and walk out as if nothing happened. Amanda is our daughter. Thomas is our son-in-law. We are still going to be family. You're going to have to see us. I smiled. You're right. I am going to have to see you at birthdays, at Christmas, at family gatherings. But now I'll see you differently. I will no longer wonder what you think of me. I already know, and you will know that I know, and you will live with that. Every time you see me, every time you pretend to be nice, you will remember tonight. William returned to the table. He had his phone in his hand. His face was pale. There's a problem with the accounts, he said. A temporary block for security. It'll be resolved tomorrow. He looked at the table. Did you pay? Yes, Stephanie answered without looking at him. She paid. William looked at me. His pride was shattered. Thank you, he murmured. It was barely audible. Don't mention it, I replied. That's what family is for, right? To help each other, especially when someone needs a small monthly allowance. Let's say $700, or in this case $100 to $800, which is what this dinner cost. William closed his eyes. Stephanie clenched her fists on her lap. Thomas came closer. Mom, let's go. Please, it's enough. I looked at him. You're right. It is enough. I turned to Amanda. She was still crying silently. Amanda, I said softly. She raised her head. You are not to blame for how your parents are. No one chooses their family. But you do choose how you act, how you treat others, how you raise your own children someday. Amanda nodded through her tears. I'm sorry, she whispered again. Don't apologize again, I told her. Just learn. Learn that money doesn't define people, that humility is not weakness, that respecting others costs nothing, and that if you ever have children, teach them to see people's hearts, not their bank accounts. Amanda sobbed harder. Thomas hugged her. Stephanie was looking away. William was checking his phone again, avoiding all eye contact. I headed for the exit. I took a few steps. Then I stopped. I turned around one last time. Oh, Stephanie, one more thing. She looked at me. What does that have to do with anything? Just curious, I replied. In which of those 4 languages did you learn to be kind? Because clearly it wasn't in any of them. Stephanie opened her mouth, but no words came out. Exactly, I said. You can speak 100 different languages and still not say anything worth listening to. I walked out of the restaurant. Thomas was walking by my side. The cool night air hit my face. I took a deep breath. It felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. Not a physical weight, an emotional one. The weight of pretending, of tolerating, of being silent. Thomas took my arm. Mom, are you okay? Perfectly fine, I answered. Better than ever. And you? Thomas sighed. I don't know. I'm processing everything. I can't believe you never told me about your job, about your money, about everything you achieved. I stopped. I looked him in the eyes. Does it bother you? He shook his head quickly. No, of course not. I'm proud. Incredibly proud. But I also feel foolish. Blind. You're not foolish, I said. You simply saw what I wanted you to see. And I did it on purpose because I needed you to grow up without depending on me, without feeling like you had a financial safety net waiting for you. I needed you to fight to work, to value everything you got for yourself. Thomas nodded. I understand, but now I also understand why you never complained, why you never asked for help, why you always seemed so calm, because you didn't need anything. I smiled. I needed many things, son. Just none of them could be bought with money. I needed to see you grow up, to see you become a good man, to see you make the right decisions. And you did in your own way. Even marrying Amanda, he asked in a weak voice. Even marrying Amanda, I replied. She is not her parents. She can learn. She can change. But that's up to her and you on how you build your relationship, on what values you choose to follow. Thomas fell silent, processing thinking. A taxi stopped in front of us. I had called for it as we were leaving. I opened the door. Thomas stopped me. Mom, can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you do it? Why did you come pretending to be poor? Why not just tell them the truth from the beginning? I closed the taxi door. I turned to him. Because I needed to know, son. I needed to confirm if my suspicions were true, if Amanda's family was really as I imagined, and unfortunately I was right. Thomas looked down. I'm sorry. You don't have to apologize for them, I said. But you do have to decide what kind of husband you want to be, what kind of father you want to be someday. What do you mean? He asked. I mean, you just saw 2 very different ways of handling money and power, I replied. Your in-laws' way and mine. They use it to control, to humiliate, to feel superior. I use it to have freedom to help without showing off to live peacefully. You decide which path to follow." Thomas nodded slowly. "I understand." I opened the taxi door again. I got in. I rolled down the window. Thomas came closer. "Mom, one last question. Tell me, are you ever going to forgive Stephanie and William?" I thought for a moment. "Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting," I replied. "Nor does it mean letting it happen again. I might forgive them someday when I see real change. When they see people as people, not as numbers. But until then, I will simply be polite, distant, and extremely careful." "And me?" Thomas asked. "Do you forgive me for not asking, for assuming, for allowing this scene to happen?" I looked at him tenderly. "Son, there's nothing to forgive. You did what you thought was right. You wanted your families to meet. That's beautiful. What happened next wasn't your fault. It was theirs. And a little bit mine, too, because I decided to play their game." Thomas smiled faintly. "You won." "I won," I nodded. "But I don't feel victorious. I feel tired and sad because I confirmed something I didn't want to confirm. That there are people who will never change. That there are broken families, even if they have money. That there are voids that no bank account can fill." The taxi driver cleared his throat. "Ma'am, shall we go?" "Yes," I replied. "Give me a second." I looked at Thomas one more time. "Go to Amanda. Talk to her. Listen to her. Support her. But also be honest. Tell her how you felt tonight. Tell her what you expect from her family and from her. Because if you don't set boundaries now, this will happen again. Over and over again." "I will," Thomas promised. "I love you, Mom. And I mean it more now than ever, because now I know who you really are, and you're amazing." I smiled. "I love you too, son. I always have. I always will. No matter how much money I have or don't have, because love has no price. And that's a lesson Stephanie and William will never learn." Thomas stepped away from the taxi. I motioned to the driver. "We can go." The taxi pulled away. I looked out the window. I saw Thomas walking back to the restaurant. His shoulders slumped, thoughtful. Probably going back to find Amanda to face his in-laws to have difficult conversations. And I felt proud, because that meant he was maturing, that he was learning, that he was choosing to be better than the example he had just witnessed. The taxi moved through the city's illuminated streets. I closed my eyes. I thought about everything that had happened, every word, every look, every tense moment. And I wondered if I had done the right thing, if I had been too harsh, too cruel, too vengeful. But then I remembered every disguised insult, every condescending comment, every look of contempt. And I knew I hadn't, that I hadn't been to anything, that I had simply been honest. Finally, the taxi drove through the empty streets of the night. The lights of the buildings passed quickly by the window. I opened my old cloth bag and took out my phone. A simple phone, nothing flashy, nothing that would draw attention. I had 3 unread messages. One from my assistant asking about a Monday meeting, another from a colleague congratulating me on a closed deal, and one from an unknown number. I opened the unknown message. It was from Amanda. "Mother-in-law, please forgive me. I didn't know my parents would be like that. I'm ashamed. I need to talk to you, please." I looked at the message for a long time. I thought about replying. Then I decided not to. Not yet. I needed time. She needed it too. Words rushed by guilt rarely mean anything real. True change takes time. Reflection. Consistent action. I put the phone away. The taxi driver looked at me in the rearview mirror. "Excuse me for asking, ma'am. Is everything all right?" I looked up and met his gaze. "Yes, everything's fine. Why?" "It's just that you got in very quiet. And usually people who leave that restaurant are happy, talking about how delicious the dinner was. You came out like you'd been in a war." I smiled slightly. "Something like that." "Was it that obvious?" He shrugged. "I've been driving a taxi for 20 years. I've seen it all. Drunk people fighting couples, breaking up families, arguing. And you have that face of someone who just said something they'd been holding back for years." "You're perceptive," I told him. "It's my job," he replied. "Besides, it helps pass the time. Want to talk about it? You don't have to. But sometimes it helps to tell a stranger, someone who won't judge you, someone who doesn't know you." I considered his offer. It was tempting, but I shook my head. "Thank you. But I think I've talked enough for one day." He nodded. "I understand. But let me tell you something. Whatever happened in there, you did the right thing. I know, because you're calm. You're not crying. You're not screaming. You're processing. And that means you spoke your truth. And the truth always brings peace, even if it hurts. His words surprised me. He was an older man, maybe in his 60s, with gray hair and hard-working hands. A simple man like I was pretending to be. "Do you believe in the truth?" I asked him. "I believe in honesty," he replied. "Not always in the absolute truth, because the truth changes depending on who's telling it. But honesty doesn't. Honesty is saying things as you feel them, without masks, without lies. Even if it hurts, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it costs you something." I nodded. "You're right. My wife always told me I was too direct," he continued. "That I said things without a filter, that I hurt people without meaning to. And maybe she was right. But she also told me she never doubted me because she knew that what came out of my mouth was real, not calculated, not manipulated. Just real," I smiled. "She sounds like a good woman." "She was," he replied. "She passed away 5 years ago." "I'm sorry," I said sincerely. He shook his head. "Don't be sorry. We had 40 years together. 40 years of honesty, of fights, of making up, of laughter, of tears. And not a single day did I go to sleep wondering what she was really thinking, because she always said it. And so did I. That's a gift." "You're right," I murmured. "It is a gift." The taxi stopped at a red light. "Can I ask you something personal?" the taxi driver said. "Go ahead. Are you rich?" The question took me by surprise, not because of the question itself, but because of the direct way he asked it. "Why do you ask because I picked you up from a $1,000 per person restaurant, but you're dressed like someone who shops at discount stores? You have an old purse, worn-out shoes, but you talk like an executive. You carry yourself like someone with power. And you paid for my taxi with crisp new bills you took out of a wallet that looks 20 years old." "Observant," I commented. "Part of the job," he repeated. "So are you?" "It depends on how you define rich," I replied. "If you're talking about money, yes, I have enough, more than enough. If you're talking about happiness, then yes, too. I have peace, health, a son I love, a job I'm passionate about. That makes me rich in many ways." He nodded, satisfied. I knew there was something. Truly rich people don't need to show it off. The light turned green. The taxi moved forward. "So what happened in that restaurant?" he asked. "If it's not too intrusive." "I pretended to be poor," I replied, "to see how they would treat me." He let out a laugh. "Seriously, that's brilliant. And how did they treat you? Like trash?" I said without emotion. "They humiliated me. They offered me charity. They treated me as if I were invisible, less than human." He stopped laughing. "I'm sorry. That must have hurt." "A little," I admitted, but it also confirmed something for me. That I was right about those people. That they weren't worth my time. That they didn't deserve my respect. And now they know it. Now they know who I am. And they're going to have to live with that shame." The taxi driver whistled softly. "I bet that was epic." "It was." I smiled. "It definitely was. We arrived at my building. An old building. Middle class. Nothing luxurious. Nothing impressive, but comfortable, safe home." The taxi driver parked. He looked at the building. "You live here?" "I live here," I confirmed. He shook his head in amazement. "You really are something special. Most people with money move to expensive areas, to buildings with doormen, with private security, with a gym and a pool. You live like a normal person." "I am a normal person," I replied. "I just have more money than most. But that doesn't make me different. It doesn't make me better. Money is just a tool, not an identity." He smiled. "I wish more people thought like that. The world would be a better place." I took out my wallet. "How much is it?" $30, he answered. I gave him a $100 bill. "Keep the change." "Ma'am, this is too much." "It's not," I said. "You listened to me. You gave me perspective. You reminded me that there are still good people out there. That's worth more than $70. He took the bill carefully. "Thank you. Really." "Thank you," I replied, "and hold on to that honesty. It's rare. It's valuable. Don't lose it." "I won't," he promised. I got out of the taxi. I closed the door. He rolled down his window. "Ma'am, one last thing. Yes, whatever happened tonight, don't regret it. Don't be sorry for it. Because people like you, people who speak the truth even when it hurts, they're the ones who change the world. Little by little, one conversation at a time." I smiled. "Thank you. I'll remember that." The taxi drove away. I stood in front of my building looking up towards my 5th-floor window. The light was off, dark silent, waiting for me. I went into the building. I walked up the stairs. I never used the elevator. I preferred to walk to stay active. I reached my door. I took out my keys, the same keys I'd had for 15 years. I opened it. The apartment was cold empty. I turned on the light. Everything was in its place. The simple living room, the small kitchen. The dining room with mismatched chairs, the walls without expensive paintings. And I felt at peace because this place was mine, truly mine. Not bought to impress, not decorated to show off, simply a space where I could be myself, without masks, without pretensions. I made myself some tea. I sat on the couch. I turned on the TV, the news, nothing interesting. I turned it off. I sat in silence, thinking, processing, feeling. And for the first time in many years, I felt completely free. Free from pretending, free from being silent, free from tolerating, free from being less than I was. Because that night I didn't just expose Stephanie and William. I also freed myself from expectations, from judgments, from the need to hide who I was. And that was priceless, more than any number in my bank account. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Thomas. "Mom, did you get home okay?" I replied quickly. "Yes, son. I got home perfectly fine. I'm home resting." His response was immediate. "I love you. Thank you for everything. For being who you are, for teaching me, for never giving up." I felt a tear roll down my cheek. Not of sadness, but of relief, of love, of gratitude. I replied, "I love you too, always." The next morning, I woke up early as always. 40 years of working had trained me to get up with the sun. I made strong coffee, no sugar. I sat by the window with a hot cup in my hands. I watched the city wake up, the vendors opening their stalls, people walking somewhere. Life went on as always, indifferent to personal dramas. My phone started to ring. It was Thomas. "Good morning, son." His voice sounded tired. "Mom, I need to talk to you." "Did something happen?" "A lot," he replied. "Amanda and I talked for hours last night. Her parents were there too. It was intense." "Tell me," I said, taking a sip of coffee. "After you left, I went back to the restaurant. Stephanie and William were still there waiting for their cards to work. It was humiliating for them. Amanda was a wreck, crying, and I was furious, more furious than I've been in years." Thomas continued. "I told them everything I felt during that dinner. I told them I was ashamed of them, that they treated my mother like trash, that their behavior was unacceptable, that I wasn't going to tolerate it anymore. And what did they say?" At first, Stephanie tried to defend herself. She said they just wanted to protect Amanda, that they wanted to make sure I had a stable family, that they didn't have bad intentions. William said I was exaggerating. But then Amanda spoke up. Thomas continued, his voice brightening. She told her parents they were wrong, that they had been cruel, that she had seen every comment, every look, every disguised insult, and that she was ashamed to be their daughter. "Mom, I had never seen Amanda stand up to her parents like that." "That's good. It means she's waking up." Stephanie became hysterical. She started screaming that Amanda was ungrateful, that they had sacrificed everything for her, that they had given her the best life, that she had no right to judge them. William backed her up. He said we were being manipulated by you, that you had planned the whole thing to make them look bad. "Of course it's my fault. That's what made them even angrier," Thomas said. "I told them they were right, that you did plan everything, but that they fell into the trap because that's who they really are." Thomas paused, then continued with a new strength in his voice. "Mom, I need you to know something. I made a decision last night. Amanda and I are going to set boundaries with her parents. We're not going to cut them off, but we're going to set clear rules. No comments about money, no comparisons, no trying to control our lives. And if they can't respect that, then they'll have to accept the consequences." "And they accepted?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "No," he replied. "They left furious. They said we were ungrateful, that someday we would regret it, that when we needed help, they wouldn't be there. William said he was going to reconsider his will. Stephanie said Amanda had chosen the wrong family." I shook my head. Emotional blackmail, the last resort of people with no arguments. But it didn't work. Amanda stood her ground. I did too. They left the restaurant without saying goodbye, without looking back. And honestly, Mom, I felt relieved. That's because you lifted the weight of living under their expectations, under their control. Now you can build your life the way you want to, not as they dictate. Thank you, Mom, Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for doing what you did last night. I know it was hard. I know it was uncomfortable, but we needed to see it. I needed to see who they really were, and Amanda needed to see that there was another way to live. You're welcome, son. I just did what I thought was right. There's something else, Thomas said. Amanda wants to come see you. She wants to apologize in person. She wants to talk to you, not as a daughter-in-law trying to make a good impression, but as a woman trying to learn. I thought for a moment. Tell her she can come, but not today. Give her a few days. Let her process. Let her think carefully about what she wants to say. Rushed apologies are hollow. The ones that take time are real. I'll tell her, Thomas promised. Mom, one more question. How are you after everything I looked out the window? The sun was fully up now. The day had officially begun. I'm fine, I answered. Better than fine. I'm at peace. Because I finally said everything I needed to say. And I don't regret a thing. 3 days passed. 3 days of silence, of processing, of reflection. When I heard the doorbell that Wednesday afternoon, I knew who it was. I opened it. There was Amanda, no makeup, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, dressed in jeans and a simple blouse. No jewelry, no heels. She looked vulnerable, real, different from the woman I had seen in the restaurant. Mother-in-law, she said in a low voice. May I come in? I stepped aside. Come in. She entered slowly, looking around, observing my apartment with new eyes. The simple living room, the old furniture, the walls without expensive decorations. She sat on the couch when I gestured. I sat across from her, waiting, not pushing, letting her find her words. I don't know where to start, she finally said. Start wherever you feel, I replied. She took a deep breath. I came to apologize, but not just with words. I came to explain why my parents are the way they are, and why I stayed silent for so long. I listened in silence. Amanda continued with a trembling voice. My parents grew up poor in a small village outside Los Angeles, without electricity, without running water. Working in the fields since they were children, they saw their own parents die young from lack of medicine, from lack of money. They went hungry. They suffered, and they promised themselves they would never be poor again, that they would do whatever it took to get out of there. I nodded. I understand. That explains a lot. They worked like animals, Amanda continued. They saved every penny. They migrated looking for opportunities. William built his business from scratch. And when they started making money, they never forgot what it was like to have none. That's why they talk about it so much. That's why they measure everything by that standard, because for them, money means survival. Security, never going back to that dark place. It's understandable, I said. Trauma does strange things to people. Amanda nodded. But that doesn't justify how they treated you. I know. And I want you to know that I saw everything. Every comment, every look, every insult. And I stayed silent because I've spent my whole life doing that. Keeping quiet, accepting, letting them control everything, because they taught me that contradicting them was betrayal. It was ingratitude. And now I asked. Now I understand I was wrong, she replied. That love is not control. That family is not blind obedience. That I can love them and still disagree with them. Thomas helped me see it. You helped me see it. It was like a blindfold was removed from my eyes. Amanda wiped her tears. I always knew something was wrong. I always felt that the way they measured people was incorrect, but I convinced myself it was me, that I was too sensitive, that I didn't understand the world. But you showed me I wasn't. That there's another way to live. A way where money doesn't define your worth. Where humility is strength. Where authenticity is wealth. I took a sip of water. Amanda, I didn't come that night to change you. I came to protect myself, to know who I was dealing with. I know, she replied. And I thank you for that, because your brutal honesty saved me. It saved me from becoming my mother, from perpetuating that cycle, from teaching my future children that people are worth what they have. I don't want that. I don't want to be that. Mother-in-law, she said, looking at me directly, I want to learn from you. I want you to teach me how to live with dignity, how to be rich without needing to show it, how to have peace in the midst of chaos, how to be strong without being cruel. I smiled tenderly. Amanda, I can't teach you that. That's learned by living, by making mistakes, by falling, by getting up. The only thing I can do is share my experience and tell you that the path is not easy, that you'll face criticism, judgments, people who won't understand why you live differently. But if you stay true to yourself, If you live by your values, you will find peace. And that peace is worth more than any number. I want to try, Amanda said. I want to be better not just for Thomas. For me, because I deserve to live without that constant pressure, without that need to impress, without that fear of not being enough. Then do it, I told her. But don't do it all at once. Do it little by little. Start by questioning your habits, your purchases, your motivations. Ask yourself before every decision, is this for me or for others? Does this bring me peace or just appearance? Amanda and I talked for hours that afternoon. We shared stories, experiences, insights. We laughed, we cried, we connected. And when she left, she was lighter, freer, with hope in her eyes. We hugged at the door, a real hug. Warm, honest, no acting, no masks, just two women connecting as humans. The weeks that followed were a time of adjustment and discovery for all of us. Thomas and Amanda were learning to navigate their relationship with her parents, setting boundaries, standing firm. It wasn't easy. Stephanie and William made several attempts to regain control using money, using guilt, using old patterns. But to their surprise, their usual tactics weren't working anymore. Amanda called me once a week sometimes to ask advice, sometimes just to talk. Thomas visited more often, sharing dinner with me in my simple apartment, helping with small repairs, being present in a way he hadn't been before. Our relationship was changing, deepening, becoming more authentic. 1 month after that fateful dinner, Thomas called with news. Mom, you need to know something. Amanda's parents have cut her off financially. I closed my eyes. I had been expecting this. Are you both okay? We're fine, Thomas replied. Actually, we're better than fine. It's liberating. For the first time, Amanda feels like she's making her own choices, living her own life. I'm proud of you both, I said. It takes courage to choose freedom over comfort. And there's something else, Thomas added. They've asked to meet with us again. They want to talk. They say they've been thinking a lot about what happened. I remained silent, letting Thomas continue. Amanda wants to give them a chance. She says everyone deserves the opportunity to change. What do you think? I think she has a good heart, I replied. Better than mine, perhaps. Will you come with us? Thomas asked. Not for them, for us. For support. I hesitated. The thought of seeing Stephanie and William again made my stomach tighten. But then I thought about Amanda, about her courage, about her hope. Who was I to stand in the way of that? All right, I said finally. I'll come. But I'm not pretending this time. They'll get me exactly as I am. Thomas chuckled. That's all we want, Mom. Just you. The meeting was set for Saturday evening at a small Italian restaurant downtown. Not Le Bernardin this time, something more modest, more authentic. I dressed in a professional but not ostentatious outfit. A navy blue dress, simple pearl earrings, comfortable but elegant shoes. Looking in the mirror, I saw a woman who no longer had anything to prove, who no longer had to hide, who was comfortable in her own skin. I arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes early. Thomas and Amanda were already there, sitting at a table near the back. They both stood when they saw me, embracing me warmly. Amanda's eyes were clear, focused, present. Thomas stood tall, confident. They had changed, both of them, in just a month. Growth was visible on their faces. We sat and made small talk while waiting for Stephanie and William. I could sense Thomas and Amanda's nervousness, the way they glanced at the door every few minutes, the way they held hands under the table. I squeezed Thomas's arm gently. Whatever happens, you two have each other. And you have me. Remember that. They both nodded, grateful. At exactly 7, Stephanie and William arrived. I barely recognized them. Stephanie wore a simple beige dress, minimal jewelry, her hair less rigidly styled. William had no expensive watch on his wrist, no designer suit, just a button-up shirt and slacks. But more than their appearance, something in their energy had shifted. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something I couldn't quite name yet. Humility, uncertainty, fear. Stephanie approached first. Her eyes met mine briefly, then looked away. Elizabeth, she said, her voice lacking its usual confidence. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I decided to give you a chance. I replied honestly, just like I hope you'll give me a chance to show you who I really am, not who you thought I was. Stephanie nodded, her eyes down. We deserve that. I deserve that. Please sit. The table was round with no head, no foot, no hierarchy. We all sat equidistant from each other. Thomas and Amanda on one side, Stephanie and William on the other, and me between them like a bridge or perhaps a mediator. The silence stretched uncomfortable heavy with unspoken words. Finally, William cleared his throat. "Before we order, we would like to say something." He looked at Stephanie. She nodded, encouraging him. "Elizabeth, our behavior at our last dinner was inexcusable. We treated you with disrespect, with condescension, with cruelty. We measured your worth by what we thought you had not, by who you are. And that was wrong. Deeply wrong." I studied his face, searching for the sincerity in his words. He met my gaze steadily, something he hadn't done at our last meeting. Stephanie spoke next, her voice soft, almost fragile. "It took losing our daughter's respect. It took her setting boundaries. It took seeing ourselves through her eyes to realize what we had become. Not parents who wanted the best for her, but controllers who used money as a weapon. And I'm ashamed." A tear slid down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away, didn't try to hide it. She let it fall. A small act, but significant. The Stephanie I had met a month ago would never have allowed herself to appear vulnerable. I spent decades in boardrooms negotiating with the toughest businessmen, detecting lies, seeing through facades. And what I saw now in both Stephanie and William wasn't a performance. It was something raw, something real. "Thank you for your apology," I said. "I accept it. But you should know that it's not me you need to make things right with. It's your daughter and your son-in-law. They're the ones who deserve your respect, your support without strings attached, your love without conditions." Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "Mom, Dad, I love you. I've always loved you. And I want you in my life, in our life. But we need to rebuild our relationship on new foundations. Not on money, not on control, but on mutual respect, on acceptance, on freedom." Stephanie reached for her daughter's hand across the table. "I want that too, sweetheart. More than anything. And I'm willing to learn to change, to listen. It won't be easy. I've been this way for so long. But for you, for us, I'll try. We'll try." William nodded, a new softness in his expression. "We've been doing a lot of thinking these past weeks. About our values, about what really matters. We even started seeing a therapist. She's helping us understand why we became so fixated on money, on status, on control. It goes back to our childhood, to our poverty, to our fear. But that's no excuse for how we treated you, any of you." The waiter came to take our orders. The tension had eased somewhat, but there was still a fragility to our interactions, a carefulness as if we were all handling something precious and easily broken. As we ate, the conversation flowed more naturally. We talked about work, about dreams, about memories. But unlike our previous dinner, no one mentioned Price's exclusivity rarity. Stephanie asked me about my career, not to compare or compete, but to understand, to learn. William shared stories of his early business struggles, not as a trophy, but as an experience, a journey. Through the meal, I observed the small ways they were trying to change. William listened when Amanda spoke, truly listened, not just waiting for his turn to talk. Stephanie asked questions instead of making assumptions. They both deferred to Thomas and Amanda on decisions like what wine to order, what desserts to share. It wasn't perfect. There were moments when old habits surfaced, a flash of judgment in Stephanie's eyes, a dismissive wave of William's hand. But they caught themselves, corrected course. They were trying. And in that effort, I saw something I hadn't expected, the possibility of growth, of change, of redemption. As dessert arrived, Stephanie looked at me with new eyes. Eyes that saw me not as competition, not as a threat, but as a fellow human being. "Elizabeth," she said softly, "I'd like to ask you something if I may. Will you tell us about your journey, how you built your career from nothing while raising a son alone? I think there's so much we could learn from you." Her question surprised me. Not because it was intrusive, but because it was genuine. She wanted to know, not to compare, not to judge, but to understand. So I told them. I told them about the tiny apartment Thomas and I shared when he was a baby, about working 3 jobs to make ends meet, about studying at night, about the promotions earned through sweat and determination, about the sacrifices made along the way. I told them about the joy of watching Thomas grow, about the pride in his accomplishments, about the peace that came from knowing I had done the best I could with what I had. And they listened, really listened. William asked thoughtful questions about business strategies. Stephanie wanted to know how I balanced work and motherhood. Amanda and Thomas sat holding hands, watching this exchange with wonder and hope. As the evening wound down, William insisted on paying the bill. This time his card worked. This time there was no showing off, no grand gesture, just a simple act of gratitude. Walking out of the restaurant, I felt something unexpected respect. Not from Thomas and Amanda, they had always respected me, but from Stephanie and William. It wasn't the respect born of fear or intimidation that I had won at our last dinner. It was something quieter, deeper, more genuine. The respect of equals. Outside under the stars, Stephanie pulled me aside. "Elizabeth," she said, her voice steady but humble, "I know we have a long way to go. I know one dinner doesn't erase what happened. But I want you to know that meeting you, truly meeting you this time, has been transformative. You've shown me a different way to be strong, a different way to be successful, and I want to learn more." I looked at her, this woman who had tried to buy me off a month ago, who had measured me by my clothes, by my job, by my perceived bank balance, and I saw someone new emerging from the chrysalis of privilege and prejudice. "I can't teach you, Stephanie," I said. "Just like I told Amanda, that's something you learn by living, by making mistakes, by prioritizing peace over possessions, connections over collections. But I can walk alongside you. I can share what I've learned. I can be a friend, not just an in-law." She smiled a real smile that reached her eyes. "I'd like that," she whispered. "I'd like that very much." As we said our goodbyes, I watched Thomas and Amanda walk ahead, arms around each other, young in love, free from the burden of expectations. Stephanie and William followed, holding hands, uncertain, humble, but trying. And I thought about the strange journey that had brought us here, how a lie had revealed truth, how pretending to be less had shown who was more, how the poorest person at the table had turned out to be the richest in all the ways that mattered. I got into a taxi. To my surprise, it was the same driver from a month ago. He smiled at me in the rearview mirror. "Well, look who it is. The lady with the secret wealth. Better dinner this time?" "Much better," I replied, pleased to see him again. "You were right, you know. The truth does bring peace, even when it hurts." "Usually does," he nodded. "Where to, ma'am?" "Home," I said. "Just home." As the taxi pulled away, I looked back at the restaurant, at the family still standing outside, talking, laughing, living. And I knew that while I had started this journey trying to expose others, what I had really done was expose myself to vulnerability, to honesty, to the possibility of genuine connection. And in doing so, I had found something more valuable than any secret I had ever kept. I had found freedom. Not the freedom that comes from wealth or power, but the freedom that comes from being fully, unapologetically yourself. The freedom of truth. The freedom of authenticity. The freedom that no amount of money could ever buy. The next few months brought changes both subtle and significant. Thomas and Amanda visited regularly, sometimes with Stephanie and William, sometimes without. The dynamics were evolving, finding new equilibrium. There were still awkward moments, still missteps, but they were fewer, less charged, more easily navigated. Stephanie called me one afternoon in late spring. "Elizabeth, I've been thinking about what you said about questioning motivations, about living authentically. William and I are downsizing. We're selling the mansion, moving to a smaller place. It feels right." I was genuinely surprised. "That's a big step, Stephanie." "It's just a house," she replied. "Just walls and floors and ceilings. What matters is who you share it with, who you welcome into it. And I'm learning that the smaller the space, the more you have to focus on what truly matters." Stephanie and William weren't the only ones changing. I found myself opening up, more sharing, more of my life, my thoughts, my feelings. Not just with Thomas and Amanda, but with colleagues, with friends, with neighbors. The weight of my secret had been heavier than I realized, and without it, I stood taller, breathed deeper, laughed more freely. I had always believed that keeping my wealth private was a way of protecting Thomas, of ensuring he developed values beyond materialism. And perhaps there had been wisdom in that. But there had also been fear, fear of being judged, fear of being used, fear of being seen as different. And in releasing that fear, I had found a new kind of strength. At work, I became more visible, more vocal. I advocated for programs supporting single parents, for scholarships for disadvantaged students, for policies that recognized worth beyond wealth. I shared my story not as a badge of honor, but as a testimony to possibility. And in doing so, I inspired others to share their stories, their struggles, their triumphs. One evening, as autumn painted the city in gold and crimson, Thomas and Amanda came for dinner with news. Mom Thomas set his face glowing with joy. "We're pregnant." I embraced them both, tears in my eyes. My heart filled with a happiness I hadn't felt in years. A grandchild. A new life. a continuation of the legacy of love and values I had tried to instill in my son. As we celebrated with sparkling cider, Amanda couldn't drink. Of course, Thomas grew serious for a moment. "Mom, there's something else. Amanda and I have been talking, and we want you to know that we want our child to know you, the real you, all of you from the beginning. No secrets, no pretending. We want them to understand that their grandmother is extraordinary, not because of her bank account, but because of her heart, her strength, her integrity." I squeezed his hand, too moved to speak. And Amanda added, "We want the same from my parents. They've agreed. No more using money as a measure of worth, as a tool of control. Our child will learn that value comes from character, not currency." Later that night, alone in my apartment, I stood by the window watching the city lights twinkle against the darkening sky. I thought about the journey of the past months, how a dinner designed to expose others had ended up revealing me to myself, how in pretending to be poor, I had discovered the true nature of wealth, how in seeking to protect my son I had nearly deprived him of knowing the fullness of who his mother was. Life was funny that way, full of unexpected twists, unintended consequences, unseen gifts. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Love you, Mom. Always have, always will." I smiled. I thought about the child growing in Amanda's womb, about the world they would inherit, about the values they would learn, about the legacy of truth, of authenticity, of real worth that would be their birthright. And I felt rich beyond measure, blessed beyond counting, wealthy in all the ways that truly mattered. Because in the end, it wasn't about the $40,000 a month or the corporate card or the Centurion membership. It was about the courage to be yourself, to speak your truth, to live with integrity, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it costs you something. It was about recognizing that true power doesn't lie in what you have, but in who you are. That true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in dignity. And that I knew with absolute certainty was something no one could ever take from me, something I would never have to pretend about again, something I could pass on to future generations as the most valuable inheritance of all.